So I would take between 3 to 5 questions. If there are no questions, then alhamdulillah.
I have a question. I have a quick question about
Questions on or off the topic, doesn't matter. Fadal.
In 333, in the narration by Abdullah, it doesn't really make a reference about this conversation, this thing being
inside of the masjid or not.
So do we take this ruling as it being in the masjid, or we take it as across the board?
Questions regarding hadith number 333, the narration of Jabir radiallahu anhu. It doesn't necessarily specify that this pot of cooked vegetables was offered in the masjid. So do we take it literal, so on and so forth? A very good question, a very good observation. Jazakallah khairan. As we said before, the books or the hadiths in this book, they are hand-picked and they are selected from Bukhari and from Muslim. And the order, how they were arranged, is based off of Sahih Muslim. And that's because Muhammad Fawad Abdul Baqi rahimahullah is the one who did a great service to many books of hadith. And from the services that he did is qama bi tarqimiha. He put numbers in them. And before, not all books, but certain books before him never had what? Numbers. No, of course. You think the books in the past had numbers in them? Abadan. It's like a calculator. There was no calculator back in the day. He used abacus. Seashells, pin, whatever they could use to count. There was no register. This is the modern age. There was no hadith number 333 inside Bukhari. Unless you knew 332 hadiths inside Bukhari. And he said, hadith, raqam, so on and so forth. There was no numbering. And we're talking about, don't think this is an ancient time. We're talking about in the 20th century. Everybody understand this? In the what? 20th century. Yes. Naam. Yes. If you got a hadith book that was made or a copy from 1950 or 1940, don't think it's going to have what? Abadan. You understand this? This is the new modern thing. So he based his service off of Sahih Muslim and allowed it to carry over to his service in Al-Lu'luh wal-Marjan in Arabic. And then the translator, Dr. Muhsin Khan, etc. Everybody clear this or not? So therefore, the chapter heading in Sahih Muslim comes from Nawawi, not from Imam Muslim, as we explained. And those are Nawawi's fiqh opinions. He may say it's makruh, but Imam Muslim may hold a view that it's haram. Imam Muslim wasn't Shafi'i. Imam Muslim was mujtahid. Like the overwhelming majority, if not all of the real Ahl Hadith. They had their own madhabs. Not as the bigots of fiqh try to get them to be a part of their fiqh class. Imam Tirmidhi was Shafi'i. Imam Nasa'i was there. La, abadan. They were mujtahideen. They were independent jurists who took their fiqh organically. Everybody understand this? So therefore, Nawawi makes the chapter heading. And Nawawi makes the chapter heading based off of all of the hadith in the chapter. And oftentimes based off of other narrations as well. Harmonizing and combining. Everybody understand this? So therefore, in the English, or in the Lu'lu'ul Marjan, you may only have one hadith, or 3 hadiths. But in Sahih Muslim, there may be 7 hadiths. But they're not all in Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, but they're just in Sahih Muslim, like we explained. Or Imam Muslim, he'll mention the hadith in its full version. And that's why when we read Nawawi's Sharh, we mention the Prophet's statement in another version that's not in Lu'lu'ul Marjan, but it's originally in Sahih Muslim. So in Sahih Muslim, it may state they were there, they were here, but in this, it may not. So to get a thorough, full comprehension, you have to back to the essence, as they say. You know what I mean? Back to the what? Back to the essence, the original. And Allah knows best. And that's any other issue as well. Any other what? And only true people of hadith and of fiqh, even in English, can understand this and appreciate this. Just like a home-cooked meal, right? Versus McDonald's. Heart, soul, love that goes into the food. Versus what? Ready-made, press a button, put it in the microwave. And Allah knows best. Just like that's bad for your body, that ready-made deen and dawah and ilm is also what? It's bad for your soul. Wallahu a'lam. Obviously, sometimes you have to get a quick bite. Allah knows best.
Assalamu alaikum. SD from Toronto, Canada. Question says, I get less than a drop of blood on a day. Then it stops for a day or two. Then again, a little drop. It stops again for a day for two. It stops again for a day or two before a heavy flow. So my question is, she says, so I guess my question is that half a drop on the first day and absent next few days, what will that fall under haiz?
Sorry. Based off of the details mentioned, question doesn't seem to be that clear to the reader. I got it a little bit. If the sister can, she can email the question and write it out properly. That way we can give a proper answer. But in general, based off what was mentioned, how long or how short can one's menstruation be? That's the main point or the initial point here. How long or how short? Can a woman menstruate for less than a day? And how many menstruations can she have in 1 month? Everybody clear on this or not? The maximum amount of menstruation, let's say for example, to keep things simple, 15 days. And there cannot be no Islamic menstruation for longer than 15 days in a month. And the least that a woman can have a menstruation, let's say to keep things simple, is 24 hours. Any blood for less than 24 hours is not considered menstruation. Everybody clear on this? And any blood that comes for a day, then goes away for 2 days, is allowed to be menstruation until the maximum amount of days. However, the general rule is that when the blood is very inconsistent like this, and it's of a small trifling amount, off and on, in most cases that's not the what? Normal menstruation. Or if it's menstruation, it's not the normal actual dawra shahriya. Everyone clear this? This is in brief. So bidnai ta'ala, if it's less than 24 hours, then don't consider it to be anything. Don't consider it to be what? Anything. If it's more than 24 hours and then it goes away for a couple of days, when you have that blood for the 24 hours, don't fast, don't pray, don't have vaginal intercourse with your husband, etc. To keep things simple until the sister can give more clarity, and Allah knows best. Hopefully that's clear, inshallah.
Can you ask him to use proper punctuation?
The question, or the question from the questioner or the question reader says using proper punctuation and spelling. We can request that, but you got to take one thing in consideration. There's maybe somebody whose English is a second language. We get emails sometimes. Certain people, disciples, they may speak Arabic as a first language. But for one reason or another, they don't want to type in Arabic. They type in English. So you find grammatical errors. Or maybe it is someone whose language is English is the first language. What's important is if a person has the ability to use proper punctuation to make it easier on the reader, to make it easier for us, which ultimately ends in an easier or clearer answer for you and for everybody. Jazakallahu khairan.
OA from Dortmund, Germany. Can a man shave his mustache or is it better to trim it?
Question coming from Germany. Can a man shave his mustache or is it better to trim it? Scholars of Islam, they differ on this issue. Some of the ulama say that all three things are permissible. To shave it, to trim it, and to cut the hair that falls over top of the lip. Okay? Some of the ulama, they discuss this in detail. And they say that there are hadiths that prove all three. Other ulama, they say shaving the mustache is muthla. Imam Malik, rahimahullah, quotes have said that it's mutilating your face to shave the mustache. What's important is, if a person trims it without shaving it all the way off, but he trims it, cuts down the thickness and also the length, perhaps that's the best thing to do. But the ulama of Islam, they don't unanimously agree on what can and cannot be done with the mustache, but it has to be trimmed. It cannot just grow. As Zayd ibn Arqam radiyallahu anhu narrated in Jami' of Tirmidhi, in the Sunan of Nasa'i, and other places as well, مَنْ لَمْ يَأْخُذْ مِنْ شَارِبِهِ فَلَيْسَ مِنَّا أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. He says, anyone who doesn't touch his mustache and doesn't take from it isn't from us. Now, how many Muslims, if not most Muslims today, unfortunately, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, they do the exact opposite. They shave their faces and they grow their mustaches thick and long, or in the modern times, because fashion always changes, the trends, is to have a shaven face. A president or a politician or parliament to have a total shaven face. Having a mustache, that's, 80s, 70s, 60s, now it has to be a shaven face. What's important is, Allahul Musta'an, the Prophet, ﷺ, he feared upon his followers many things. And from the things that he feared upon his followers was to follow the Jews and the Christians, to follow the polytheists, to follow the Zoroastrians, the fire worshippers, to follow them, and to imitate them, and to copy them, and to take their identity, to take their style, even issues of fashion and trend, and to be like them and look like them. It's something that the Prophet feared upon his followers, which can be found in many, many prophetic hadiths. As far as the colonizing of the lands of the Muslims, the French, the Italians, the Germans, let alone the British, okay, the Dutch, the Danes, etc., the scramble for Africa, Indochina, French Indochina, all around the world they conquered and they colonized many lands. And they developed certain systems, whether it was a caste system or colorism or whatever the case may be. And in the 50s or the 60s or the 40s, when these countries gained independence or fought for independence after bloody wars, after hundreds and thousands were killed, and some of the most horrible genocides that you can read about, that you may not necessarily hear about or get in an Orthodox classroom. They teach the children about the Jewish Holocaust as if it's the only Holocaust that ever happened in history. But these millions of people that were killed here, these thousands of people, 20 million people were decimated in 10 years in the Congo and this and that. You'll never ever hear about that. So in India, the millions that died, starved to death, in Churchill, he said they shouldn't mate like rabbits. When he was asked about the responsibility, who's responsible for these millions of people who died in India, current day Bangladesh? He said, it's not my fault. No one told him to mate like that and have so many people with so little food. And the list goes on. What's important is everybody knows these countries, they had to fight for their independence through all types of bloody wars. Peaceful struggle as well. The movement of Gandhi and others, etc. The point is that when these countries gained independence, in most cases it was only physical independence. And they still were being colonized by those powers, whether it was politically, financially, economically, on the military scale, and the worst of all, obviously, being the mental. That you're still beneath us and lower than us. And anyone who has a beard is dirty and nasty. A clean-shaven face is hygienic, is professional. Anyone who has darker skin is low, of a low caste system. He cannot be educated. This tribe, we teach them certain things. This tribe, we give them arms. Dirty or evil people were put into power. That's why most of those third world countries are poor today and riddled by corruption today. All right, it's not an accident. The point is, the Muslim lands that were conquered and colonized, they didn't just conquer and colonize them physically. They didn't just beat them through cannons and steel. They beat them mentally as well. And one of the greatest traces of this is the Muslim appearance. A beard is dirty and it's nasty. You have to be clean shaven. You have to have tight pants. You can't wear oil. You have to have cologne, alcohol, French culture, German culture, Italian culture. It's a reality to this day. And this is one of the reasons why you find so many Muslims who come from overseas, come from Egypt or Morocco or whatever country they come to, United States or Canada. Many of them, if not most of them, they want to shave their faces. It's not an accident. So that's very dangerous. Growing a mustache and shaving the face. Trying to be like the mushrikeen, be like the polytheists, and look like them is very, very dangerous. And the Muslim is supposed to have his identity. The Muslim is supposed to have honor in his tradition and in his culture. That's good tradition and good culture. Everybody understand this? So it's very unfortunate, let alone the fact that if you read about the history of the beard, you find the non-Muslims themselves, the polytheists themselves, many of them had a great deal of respect and virtue for a man that had a beard. And it was considered to be a sign of strength, a sign of prowess, a sign of fertility, all types of things that come from the beard. Exact opposite of the people today. Allahul Musta'an. Allah knows best.